Hello and welcome to the brand new episode of Spillin the Beans, the hot new Barrow AFC podcast that's being described as alright in pubs and bars across Hyndpool. Now, long-term listeners of the last two pods might have noticed this isn't the usual southern accent you're used to. Johnny is far too important to write his own intros. I think he thinks he's Sean Keaveney now or something. But fear not, he's in the green room eating hot baguettes with our guests. I'm Barrow Punks, not my real name of course, to Mr. and Mrs. Punks, a son, Barrow. But when I'm not making memes about Never the Twain or some other bang-up-to-date pop cultural reference, I'm doing the grisly, sinewy behind-the-scenes work on beans. And now this. On this week's show, we'll be previewing our home game with Shrewsbury. The Sallops. Is that a new thing, the Sallops? Not something I've heard before. Maybe it's just passed me by. Sounds a bit like a cream you might put on an itchy ball bag. Past the Sallop love, I'm fully chafed down here. I actually walked out of our FA Cup game down there a few years back at the old Gay Meadow, or as it's called now, the Meadow. We'll also be discussing our win at Crawley at the weekend, which means his was played in front of the very talented Shane Ritchie. Has he been responsible for our upturn in form? The lads will discuss that as well, alongside the signing of Charlie McCann and lots of other Barrow goodness. So with that, I'll hand over to the lads.
Meet the gang 'cause the boys are here, the boys to entertain you.
So here we are, number 3, Spilling the Beans. Never quite sure whether it's what I should say when I say that. I know the intro says spill the beans, but it's actually called Spilling the Beans, so it's quite confusing. I think you'll get used to it at some point. But yeah, we're back with another couple of guests. Our nucleus, our MJ Williams, Dave Ingham. How are you, Dave? You okay?
I'm very well, Johnny. How are you?
Not too bad at all, thank you. And we've got a newcomer this week, Spilling the Beans Virgin, Ronan the Barbarian. How are you?
Yeah, good, Johnny. Hope you're well too.
I'm very good, mate. Very good.
That was the week that was. It's over. Let it go.
So once again, we've won another football game back to back. When was the last time we went back to back? Does anybody know that? Must be some time ago now.
Back end of last season, probably, when we...
Yeah, about March time, we ended up drawing a load of games, didn't we?
Yeah, so I should check that out. But it certainly feels good, and it's done wonders to our points total. And taking ourselves back a couple of weeks when we first did the pod. And I mentioned last time there was that kind of real dose of realism. Feeling pretty bleak and desperate for a win. We got that against Crewe. We did the same against Crawley, and just a bit of sort of prep I was doing when I was coming into the pod. And it kind of brings me to my first question. When I've gone through the stats, some key stats like possession, completed passes, shots on target, that type of stuff. If you go through every game this season, it hasn't really changed. The possession hasn't increased. The shots on target haven't really increased. The passing accuracy hasn't in that sense. So there's still that struggle of quality there. But the results have picked up. I mean, what do you attribute that to, Dave, if it's not some of them things I was discussing there?
I think maybe it's something more intangible. I think it's things like an uptick in desire from each individual on the pitch. Really wanting to take pride in defending and keeping a clean sheet and kind of winning their individual battle. I'm not sure whether there is a metric on the Opta stats for desire, but if there is, that's definitely gone in the right direction in the last couple of weeks. And credit to the players. We kind of said right in the first pod, didn't we, that they needed to step up and take responsibility for their own performances, and they've certainly done it. And the results have shown that. I think it's also got to do with the fact that we're getting some players back on the park. MJ Williams, Isaac Fletcher, Raheem Harper came back at the weekend as well. Whitfield's back after his suspension. So kind of it's all these little things that, when you're in a bad run lots of little things seem to be going against you. When it's on, the shoes on the other foot, it's all the little things are going. It's all in the win column. So long may it continue.
Yeah, what's your thoughts, Ronan? How do you think we've sort of managed to turn this round of late?
There was a minor change in the Crew game that I noted after we'd got absolutely humped by Blackpool, and it was their attitude towards each other. It wasn't necessarily the attitude toward the game. They were all round each other straight away. They were all, if one of them made even just a simple block tackle out and it went out for a goal kick, not goal kick, went out for a corner or a throw in, they're all round each other, commending each other. The attitude towards each individual player had massively changed, and we'd gone away from what was, I think it wasn't so much a blame culture. It was just a bit of a, oh Christ, he's made a mistake, and everyone shrugs their shoulders and like nobody goes to pick each other up. And I think it was really notable in that Crew game that we changed massively our attitude towards it. So I don't know if that's just something we've tweaked. Sort of, someone's had a word in training and gone, right, let's get around each other.
Do you think that's maybe a function of the fact that as a team they have been together that little bit longer now, and they are starting to kind of build that team spirit and that togetherness, and maybe in the face of adversity they have, rather than crumble completely, they have decided to kind of pull together and turn it around. It's maybe a time thing rather than anything else.
It could be two things really, because if you, I know it's really, really minor, but if you watch the training videos when Rob Kelly's come in, there's two speeches made at the end of every single training session, it seems to me, just off what they've shown us. Rob Kelly speaks, it's always a very motive, positive sort of way of speaking, and the way he says things, and it's quite hard. You've got to really listen for it, because obviously the way that they edit it and whatnot, it's a massive positive thing. So maybe it's just a change in sort of, if you're buying this sort of stuff, which I do, using positive words around the place. People are positive to you, you're more likely to be positive to other people. So it's all them little things that people look at and go, what a load of rubbish this fella's talking here. But it does add up when you get in them environments. Positivity creates more positivity for me, and I think that's been massive. And the fact we just cut out mistakes, we really, really are cutting out massive mistakes that we're making in football games. That's obviously helped a hell of a lot.
Yeah, I think there seems to be a development of camaraderie, I think, certainly the last couple of games. I think that win helped against Crawley, and against Crew, could take that into the Crawley game. And I think that was exemplified by the way Stanway was at the end of the game. He looked like a sort of kid coming out of Circus, didn't he? Like he was battling on Cornwallis Street. He was right in the face of the Crawley forward or whoever the player was. And I mean, and just on that as well, I think it's really surprised me that about Stanway, because I think one of my worries wasn't about him this year taking over Farman, was that Farman always had that kind of stature and that size and that presence and experience, and I kind of thought we're going to lose that. And having Stanway in goal full time, it doesn't seem like that sort of big presence that Farman was, but in a very, very short space of time he's proved himself capable in every area, certainly in terms of kind of mindset and mentality and stuff like that. So do you think that's kind of spreading across the team as well, Dave?
Potentially, yeah. I think obviously Stanway taking over the gloves from, as you say, an established character like Farman, who was always referenced by all the managers as being like a leader in the dressing room. There's probably a lot of pressure on him, not only the fact that he's the number one going into the season, but again, he's got to kind of fill the shoes, fill the gloves of Farman as a character in the dressing room. And as a goalkeeper, you've got to boss your defence. You've got to have that confidence to, dish out a rollicking to the guys in front of you who've maybe got, 10, 15 years, well, maybe not 15, 10 years more experience than yourself. And, he is still a relative rookie at this level. And goalkeepers is perhaps the one position where they take the longer to mature than anywhere else on the pitch. But I think he's kind of reacted really well to it. And, listening to Mick Payne, who obviously knows a thing about goalkeeping, talking to Adam on Saturday, and he kind of, seems to rate him very highly, not just on the technical side, which I think is, going to develop all the time, but just, the way he conducts himself. And, and going back to that little altercation that he had right at the end there with Loft, I think, obviously the guy missed the chance, and I think did he just kind of, was there an errant boot, in the stomach or the leg of whoever it was on the goal line? And I like the fact that Stanway kind of stuck up for his mate, and you're away from home, you're under pressure, you're under the cosh, and he's come out and said, you know what, I won't swear, I know we've got the explicit thing, but we're Barra Soccer, you don't do that to us. We're a team, we're a gang. Yeah, full credit to him.
Yeah, it's certainly how we can win away from home, just being like that. In terms of something else we discussed on a couple of pods ago before that we get the win at Crewe, at home to Crewe, is that luck just seemed to be evading Wing. At Bristol, the penalty shout, the first goal that went in, it just felt like everything was compounding the kind of misery of him and the side. We've seen that luck turn around in the second half against Crawley. Dave, do you think that's kind of coincidental in some ways that we kind of earned a little bit of that luck?
Well, you make your own luck in certain quarters as well, don't you? But I mean, there was also the one in the first half when Pereira hit the post and it was right in front of us, and you could see it flashing across the goal line, and I think everybody was like deep breath, waiting for it to kind of ricochet off the other post and nestle in the back of the net, and it kind of just when it evaded and went out for a goal kick, everyone was so relieved, and you thought, well, hang on a minute, this might be our day. And McCurdy got himself into a few good positions, and the lad they brought on, Forster, he was a lively so-and-so. So we had to be on our mettle to kind of to get the win. But we did have a bit of luck along the way, and every team gets that. We're not. It's you're not a lucky side just because you get the odd rub of the green. It happens to everyone. But no, you make your own luck. I think by and large we defended well, we competed especially well, and they got the rewards.
Yeah, Josh Gordon got on the score sheet for the first time since his return. What did you think when he came back to Barrow Road and how he's kind of been since he's come in and obviously getting that goal on Saturday?
It was a proper Josh Gordon goal, wasn't it? We'd worked it. It was like everything we'd seen when he was up from the waters, where he just pulled the ball back from Fletcher, and then we managed to get the goal from what was it, about 10 yards less than. So it's sort of a little bit of what we've missed in terms of someone who's just willing to get in the box, willing to get into that sort of last 10 yards of the area of the sort of pitch, and he's done well to take his chance, really, although it was fairly easy. But I was a bit sceptical because I just thought we've got a lot of similar sort of goal output strikers to what is Josh Gordon. But when I sort of had to think about it, and weirdly when I was on holiday, I was thinking it's not so much his goal output, and it's a bit similar to Dennis Cameron in a way, where it's more of his off the ball effort and how we're sort of triggering presses, how we're trying to do them sort of things. I think he's been really, really excellent at them sort of little intricate details that most people probably wouldn't look at, and it's a bit more like your nerdy sort of football way of looking at things. But we're starting from the front a lot more positive. He's engaging defenders a lot higher up the pitch, which I don't think necessarily the strikers that we've had on the books have been doing. Cameron's obviously completely different because of the way he plays football. And Walker, for me, isn't that kind of striker in the way he sort of presses and engages. So he's really reminded me of how good he was when we first had him in terms of what sort of football he is about. And he's a massive difference to what we've got up front in a way. Although people would argue he's not scored loads and loads of goals, myself included in that. I think he's a different string to what is a bit of a weird attack that we've got this season.
Yeah, I think as well people forget about Josh Gordon that he's consistently playing League Two football, and competing for the most part last season at Walsall. So he's one of the strikers who's kind of come in, I wouldn't say hot, but certainly warm. He's match ready, Dave.
Yeah, and there was two Josh Gordons the first time round. We had the first season where he was almost like a Gavin Knight style, chasing crisp packets in the wind and, expending all of his energy, doing the dirty work, doing the off the ball stuff. And then the second season when Pete Wild just kind of said, right, you stand in front of the posts, we'll supply you, and you go and score goals, and that's what I want you to do. And he did, and he scored 15. And despite some people thinking he was terrible, 15 goals in this league, I think that probably would have put him second or third in the goal charts last season. Certainly would have been top of our club goal charts last season. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out and sees whether we're going to get season 1 Josh Gordon, season 2. Or a blend of the two. If we can get a kind of a blend of both Josh Gordons, then I think we've got a good player on our hands.
Yeah, and your new favourite guy, Dave, Isaac Fletcher, another great performance from him.
Yeah, he's. I'm running out of good things to say about him. You could tell back end of the second half that he was absolutely shattered. Sorry. I think most of them were knackered in that second half, weren't they? Because of the lurg it had gone round the camp. But yeah, he was using his presence well. He was good in both boxes, neat and tidy on the floor as well. It was difficult. To be fair, there was kind of on the train on the way home on Saturday. I was thinking, did anyone have a bad game? And maybe Elliot Newby's kind of final ball let him down a few times on Saturday. One or two kind of hairy moments elsewhere on the pitch. But apart from that, you're thinking that, once again, it was, 2, 3, 4 in with a shout of man of the match, and no one had a stinker. So, yeah, all to the good.
Just to touch on Fletcher Day, then it seems to be a little bit of a weird obsession of our fan base where we're sort of going like for like of so-and-so's replaced Spence, so-and-so's replaced Gods, so-and-so's replaced Campbell. Do you feel he's different to what we had in them three in terms of his sort of size and stature and the way, the position on the football pitch at which he plays? Because to me, he seems completely different to them three as a footballer and a real different option to what we had.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Yeah, I don't think he's like for like at all. And I'm struggling to think of anyone else in the squad who kind of offers the all-round options that he does. Certainly, the kind of, it was him and Mahoney who were the number 10s on Saturday, and you wouldn't say that Fletcher and Mahoney are kind of similar players. So I don't think he's. Yeah, you put me on the spot there. I'm struggling to think of a player that even in the past that you would say, Isaac Fletcher is the new whoever. He's not the new Steve Howsham. He's not the new, whoever else is he?
He's got some weird similarities to Liam Hughes for me. And I think that's what he can just tuck into that sort of height, play slightly onto one side of the pitch, because Hughes sort of came inside a little bit off the left. And that's where he sort of fits in for me. That's the first player he reminded me of was him. He's strict above what I think he'll go on to achieve really good things in football, Fletcher. And I'm not saying Liam Hughes had a bad career by any stretch of imagination, but I think he's just got that. He's got everything and the temperament which Liam Hughes didn't have, which is probably will let him down in the end. And that's been quite impressive for me to watch.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout actually, Liam. Yeah, because certainly in terms of stature, they've got that. He's got the height and the presence, hasn't he? But I think Fletcher's certainly more disciplined on and off the pitch than Hughes, and certainly offers a bit more, I think.
Yeah, I think it was last week anyway in the pod, I made the comparison to Keane Spence. It was a lazy comparison in some sense, but it was more referring to the fact that he's kind of just been picked from the lower leagues. Nobody really was kind of saying, "Oh, go out and get this kid" and stuff. He kind of decided, everyone's kind of looking into him, looking into his career, where he's come from, what he's done. Very much kind of a manager's choice in that sense, and just really kind of excelled and found his place in the team. But in terms of, that's really where the comparison ends with Keane Spence, I think, because in terms of player, he's completely different, and that's encouraging, because I think at times a lot of people had the frustrations with Keane Spence. So I think if they can start to see a midfield, a consistent performance in that midfield with Isaac Fletcher being key part of that, then I think we're going to start to see that area of the pitch kind of develop again, because that's something really we just totally lost for the first sort of 6 or 7 games of the season. So, and then actually kind of moving slightly away from the game of the weekend and just kind of covering some other news that's happened over the course this week. We've got a new kid in town, Charlie McCann. What can you tell us about him, Dave?
Absolutely nothing. Never heard of him before we signed him. I had no interest in his career beforehand. So I'm not one of these people who claims encyclopedic knowledge of every player that's ever played in the conference or the National League and League Two and all that sort of thing. So I will leave it to all the recruitment experts on social media to tell him, to tell us how great he is based on a 2-minute highlight reel on YouTube. Over to you, Ronan.
So I got sent an article about him just when he'd come back from his knee injury at the bottom end of the League Two with Forest Green. I remember reading it at the time, but somebody just put it back up to me, and it was sort of if he comes good sort of player, he will genuinely be the best player in the league sort of thing. And I always read them and think it's a bit tongue in cheek, but I remember when I got it sent across to me by a friend the other day, and I thought, bloody hell, I remember reading that and thinking, he's massively highly thought of at Rangers. You know, come from the Man United Academy, which is no sort of not to be sniffed at sort of thing. And his stats at Forest Green are absolutely incredible when you look at it in isolation. I think the weird thing for me, and I listened to his sort of sign on interview, it was really the way he speaks is really strange. He's got a sort of brass arrogance to him. In sort of he thinks, yeah. Ethan was asking some questions. He was sort of going, "Well, yeah, mate, I play midfield. I've scored, shed loads of goals in the National League. Like that's what I'm going to do." And I thought we'd lack that a little bit because I think we have Pete Wildy's gone about a team of good lads, and I think that's nice, but we just need someone a bit arrogant, someone who's going to take the sort of ball and progresses with it. And I think that's really what this lad could be. All the nerds think he's brilliant, so that's enough for me, really, as well.
I'd just like to temper that by saying Callum Gribbin came through the Man United system and was highly rated.
Well, yeah.
So I'm not saying he's the new Callum Gribbin, perish the thought, but let's just give the lad a chance and see what he does for us. And let's judge him on that, really, rather than what he's done beforehand or where he's come through the ranks or whatever.
And that's a nice, actually, segue, Dave, into our new feature. 1 second, let me just find a jingle. Yeah, bring him home. For this part of the podcast, Dave is going to dive into the archives of former players who played for Bauer FC and still playing somewhere in the football sphere. And yeah, what have you got for us this week, Dave? Who's been doing what?
Well, I think if I covered all of our ex-players, this would be a 2-hour spin-off podcast. I know we're obsessed with former players, and yeah, it's something I like to do on Twitter now and again. So I'd say the edited highlights would be laurels hugely to Messrs Lillis and Taylor at Rochdale for being part of the management team that pulled off a great win up there by the border, 2-0. Good result for them. And then on Tuesday night, I'll highlight the Morecambe versus Gateshead game. Big shout out to Joe Grayson for getting an assist for Gateshead, and also well done to Harry Panayiotou, who did absolutely nothing positive for Morecambe. So well done to him for that. Keep that up, Harry. You'll be welcome back any time with that sort of career contribution. And there'll be more of that next week.
Yeah, extra special bring them home points if you've done something detrimental to any success that our rivals have. So yeah, we might make a little scoreboard there, see what's coming on. Yeah, let's move into the game next week. And first of all, let's hear from Nathan, I think from Shrewsbury, who's left us a message. Yep, here we go.
Hello, you've reached the offices of Given Beans. All our beans operatives are busy getting it forward at the moment. Please leave your message after the beep.
Alright lads, it's Nathan, a proud Shrew, supporting the club far too many years now. We've had a rough 18 months, to be completely honest. It started with Paul Hurst, a bit of a cult hero at the club. He got us to the playoff final and the Czech Trade Trophy final in 2017-18. We were a game away from the championship. Sadly, that went, well, we don't want to remember that. After Paul Hurst left in November, we brought in Gareth Ainsworth, very experienced coach, who then ditched us 4 months later to join Gillingham in March of last season. We then brought in Michael Appleton. Less said about him, the better. He's still at the club, and he's so far averaging 0.6 points per game. He would need to double that to have the sort of points you need to actually stay up. We've had a very rough 18 months. We've got an owner who won't sell the club. Luckily, I'm not going to the game on Saturday. Well, yeah, we could say luckily. And my score prediction for the game will be 4-1 Barrow, I think. I know it's not very positive, but to be completely honest, there's not been many positives in the past 18 months for this club. So, good luck. I wish you all the best.
So, I don't think... I suppose a must-win game is the wrong term, but when you look at Shrewsbury's form and when you look at the opportunity here to win 3 on the bounce, especially ahead of a tougher away trip to Oldham, I feel like this is really a game we must win. What do you think, Ronan?
Well, here's one to get us excited in the proper Barrow way. So if you look at Appleton in sort of isolation for what he's done at Shrewsbury, he's had 11% win ratio last season and a 10% win ratio this season. Their entire fan base is wanting rid of him. Like there's not a person I could find, and I look on Twitter the other day who wanted to keep him after his sort of latest results, which definitely means we're going to get beat 1-0 at home, and that's going to all sort of go absolutely Pete Tong, and we'll keep him in a job for another week. But on a serious note, we've got a really good opportunity just to get ourselves back in that middle pack. There's a lot of teams who are on sort of 14, 15 points, and I think a win Saturday would just sort of put everything nicely back onto a sort of an even keel where I think we should be, in terms of sort of like, you know, all the different factors that people are going to start throwing at me. So I think there's a real opportunity here to sort of grab that sort of, it's not just been a couple of games we've done well, we're actually on an upward trajectory. And I think once you get after that, we've got a couple of difficult games away at Oldham and Walsall. So just to get into that, going to them two with having 9 points at the back of the year, I think Oldham's probably a little slightly nicer game out of the two of them at the minute, with Walsall being top of the league. But it'd be a really good opportunity to get people going into that Oldham game and getting people on the train to go, or the buses, to get on and, you know, do a massive turnout of what could be a really good away day. You know, a half-hour kick-off in Manchester is an absolute belter.
Yeah, there'll be certainly a few that won't make it, that's for sure. Sticking at 5:30 is just a recipe for disaster. Dave, I think I probably share some of Ronan's sentiments there. The more I feel Barrow should win the game, the more I'm inclined to think we're gonna mess it up.
Yeah, I hate games that we should win. I don't like derbies, and I don't like games where we should win. They just knock my spidey senses all over the place. I must admit, I've not paid a lot of attention to Shrewsbury, probably since we drew them in the FA Cup all those years ago. They're not really a team that features on my radar, but kind of listening to the odd podcast and whatever that covers League Two, the kind of general consensus from the so-called experts is that they've got a way of playing that doesn't match to the squad that they've got. So whether that's a case of, you know, Appleton's been told he's got 3 or 4 transfer windows to remodel the squad and, you know, get the players in that he wants. But I think history tells us that, you know, chairman in League Two, you know, get a bit nervous once the trapdoor kind of opens that little bit wider. So, you know, he's going to be under pressure, isn't he? I mean, just looking at the squad, they've got some good experienced players in there. Kind of our ex-loanee Tom Anderson at the back, Sam Stubbs, who's, you know, done all right with Bradford and 1 or 2 others, and John Marquis up front. So they've got a bit of a spine there that, you know, potentially on the day could cause you some damage. But obviously they've not really been doing it much for the rest of the season. So we've just got to hope that, again, if we kind of apply ourselves as we have in the last couple of league games in terms of back to basics, win your individual battle, help your mate out, absolute desire to keep a clean sheet and to, you know, to beat your kind of personal opponent, and then hopefully up front with with Josh Gordon getting himself a bit more match fit and a bit sharper, and whether it's my man Fletcher or whoever else supporting in the 10s, whoever it might be, you know, we've got areas where we can hurt the opposition, but, you know, let's be honest, it's League Two, it's the sort of division where inconsistency is rife. You know, most teams, not just ourselves. So it is, you know, who does it on the day, and, you know, fingers crossed it's the good guys.
Yeah, I'm always thinking every year, when the first thing I try and do is think is who's going to be this season's bankers to go down, because if we can find one of them, that means you'll need another one to be worse than us, because I'm still kind of always looking at the season glass half empty and thinking, well, if we're just not going to get relegated, then I can build or make the hopes on top of that. And it certainly seems like Shrewsbury are one of them teams, but yeah, it just depends, I suppose, how long they keep hold to him and what kind of moves they make next to change that. But yeah, it's it feels a strange game from that sense. But I mean, would you make a prediction, Ronan? How would you feel if you could sort of gun to your head?
Yeah, I'm really optimistic about it, because if you look at the back three of Boyle, Anderson and Stubbs, there's absolutely zero pace in that back three for me. And I think that's where we've got to play like Gordon, who's going to make that difference. So I think, for me, I'm quietly confident that we'll win and keep a clean sheet, but I'm not going to give an exact score of what that will look like. But that's my positivity sort of going into it. But that definitely means that we're going to get a nice 1-0 smash and grab at the end.
I think it's going to be interesting as well, because if you, as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, the stats have been pretty consistent in terms of the way we've approached games. We've kind of, set our shape off the ball. We've not really had much of the possession. We've not really had that many sort of shots on target and stuff. This game, it's probably got to be different, Dave, because, like I say, with that expectancy to beat a team who's clearly struggling, they've lost the last £300, Barrow have won the last 2, you've probably got to set up a little bit different and start to see certainly a bit more control of the ball and do something with that and create something for that for sure.
I think if, Ronan's obviously done his scouting and identified the lack of pace in the opposition. So I think, if I was Michael Appleton with all that kind of team at my disposal, I'd just say, right, sit in, let them come on to us, let them try and break us down. If it's, if we can get a point, fantastic, because you know what it's like. Every manager, if they get a point at Barrow, they always stand there in front of the windswept main stand. Oh, it's a tough place to go. Oh, it's a long journey, and it's like, it's a patch of grass, lads. Get on with it. So he'll be absolutely cock a hoop to come away with a draw, I think, on Saturday. So maybe we are going to have to be patient as a team and as fans in the stand. Just if we're not 2-0 up after 5 minutes, just because they're down the bottom, maybe have to just be patient and accept that we are going to have to knock it around a bit to try and draw them out and get some space in behind. But we have got some players with some pace that we can exploit them, and whether that's drawing them out and being positional about it, or whether it's one-on-one duels. We've got the potential to obviously win the game or win the game well. But as I keep saying, it's what we do on the day, isn't it?
Just to add to your patch of grass and really hard pointed Barrow, it's 58 mile-an-hour winds on Saturday for Storm Amy during the game, so that'll be really, really lovely to watch.
A light breeze, then, yeah.
Really, 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 really enjoy the crosswinds coming across the Irish Sea.
Oh well, I wonder how many they'll bring Shrewsbury. Actually, it's always one of them. I don't really kind of know where to position them, in terms of size and stature of clubs, and so nowhere really. It's a sort of funny place, and their new ground as well is just a bit kind of awkward and awful to get to. It's a bit of a strange thing. I've got no opinions on Shrewsbury whatsoever. Normally, every club I have some form of opinion, but them, unless anyone can correct me, is kind of a bit.
Yeah, I think Shrewsbury itself's a nice place. I'm looking forward to going there for the away game. There's plenty of good pubs in Shrewsbury. Sure, it's a good day out, but they're just kind of there, aren't they? They're on the coupon, and that's no disrespect to them. I'm sure there's plenty of fans around the country who've got no opinion on us. Which is fair enough. But yeah, well, we shall say that. I don't think it's a happy camp at the moment down at Shrewsbury. I think there was lots of talk about a takeover, which seems to have fizzled away, and there's lots of discontent towards the chairman, who's, as usual, because he's not putting absolutely every penny of his family's fortune into the club, then obviously he's not showing ambition, and needs to be run out of town as far as AFC Telford, perhaps. Getting banished. So yeah, not a happy camp. So hopefully we can capitalise on that.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is, like Ronan said before, if Barrow can win on Saturday, that takes them to 15 points after 11 games. And I think at that point everyone kind of goes, well, that's all right, So that's a massive turnaround from where it was, after that sort of Bristol Rovers defeat. So yeah, things feel pretty good. Let's see how we do on Saturday. And lastly, I think in any other business, there's not much this week. Obviously, the fanzine's still in production. We're hoping to have that out at the Oldham game, if not the game after. Dave, you wanted to talk a bit about the Lancs Cup?
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because it seems that there's a section of our fan base who really take it quite seriously and are interested in it and want to go to watch games, and yet they've been scheduled for midday kickoffs on a Tuesday on training grounds, and it was that farce the other year where we ended up playing. It was Burnley, wasn't it? We ended up playing them the following season because they couldn't find a date, and it just, I don't know, it just strikes me as being one of these competitions that's probably run its race and, you know, it isn't really necessary anymore. I know we had a couple of trialists on playing against Burnley. Obviously, McCann went on to sign, and I believe we had two young lads from Ashington in the team as well. But you can do, you know, they talk about having bounce games, and I'm sure these bounce games are, you know, against under 21 teams and, you know, reserve teams or scratch 11s from championship teams who are looking for a bit of match practice and that sort of thing. I just struggle to see the benefit of a training ground game. You know, if it's a bit like COVID. To me, football didn't really count at that time because the fans weren't there, and if there's no one there, you know, if there's no one there watching it, what's the point to it, to be honest? So yeah, it's just a bit sad that a competition that could have some values just seems to be, completely sidelined by the clubs that actually play in it.
Yeah, I think the one exception that time we sent Steve there to do a report for Beans. I think went to some leisure centre in Preston somewhere to watch a game. Ronan, does the Lancashire Cup get you all excited? Or
you see, I'm sad, mate. I just like watching football. Like I have watched some proper naff stuff. Like I've took my missus to watch a second tier division Poland game. So, and she will, if you ever get to speak to her about her, she'll tell you about how brilliant that 0-0 draw was for the first game of the season for Wisla Krakow. So I will watch anything, mate. So I'm not really bothered. But it's either, you've got to look at it two ways. It's virtually impossible to resurrect that competition for me unless you make it into some form of pre-season thing, which is never going to happen because of where we sit in terms of people doing their own things and wanting to go on lovely tours to, where did we go this year? Lancaster, which, good day out if you walk it that way. So I think it's really sad that any form of game of football that involves my football club is really difficult to watch for some. And I think what we should be trying to press with, especially if it's a home game, is making it as accessible as possible for people to watch. But kudos to the club. Whenever it's been a home game, they've done really positive things with sort of like local skills and stuff like that. So, the first person to criticise, first person also to take his hat off and say, well done there. But I just think, I don't know, that there must be some sort of way we can make it a bit more accessible, make it an opportunity. I don't know, but let's be honest, teams like Burnley don't really care about, what we have to think about people watching games, let's be honest.
That's a good point. And, the final that we won the other year, who will ever forget the glorious scenes of Rory Feely standing in front of a half full main stand with a trophy that they got out of a Subbuteo set. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Ronan. Credit to our club for doing that sort of thing for the games. But it's just when you're going away and you're playing on closed training grounds, and there's that little line on the preview that says, spectators can attend if they wish, as almost to say, well, if you've not got anything else better to do with your lives, sort of thing, than filling up our car park. Yeah,
don't ask that question, Dave. Not got anything better to do with our lives. We're on a podcast talking about.
Johnny, honestly, the games I've seen over the years and the distances I've travelled to watch some pretty poor football. I'm in no condition. I'm in no position to kind of cast stones at others. But yeah, it's one of them. I suppose it's like a lot of things. Either take it seriously or don't bother at all. This kind of half-assed approach does nothing for me, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it brings into question as well the lack of the B team academy and stuff like that, because if you've got that, a competition like that is a great way to start to bring some of that through and give them some kind of match time. But without that, you really are stretching the whole squad a little bit thin, trying to strum up 15 or so players who fancy that in a leisure centre in Preston on a Tuesday night or whenever it is. So yeah, that's that. I don't know if we sold that or undersold it. I'll let you decide. And also the only reason I actually like it, because it reminds people of our spiritual county home as well. So when we win that, it's a moment of pride.
I've got a programme in my collection of when we played Man United in the Lancashire Cup, and they had, I think, 4 or maybe 5 European Cup winners in the team. And then you compare that to the kind of the calibre of team that Burnley put out. No disrespect, and by the way, this might be a bring him home segue, but Lee McEvely's lad was playing for Burnley. apparently 6'6" and a bit of a unit. So
that doesn't surprise me.
No, credit to Mrs. McEverley, both at the conception and the birth, for.
I think we can close on that one. I think that's a good way to end the pod. No, nice one, Dave, as always, and you, Ronan, and yeah, let's hope we can do 3 in a bounce on Saturday and get us all singing and dancing on the way to Boundary Park next week. Cheers, lads.
Cheers, John.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
bye now.